Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the first regular Quorum Court meeting of this new term and also the organizational meeting. I welcome the public and the new JPs, returning JPs, and I call this meeting to order. First up is I have asked JP Simons to do us the pleasure of the honor of prayer and pledge this evening. JP Simons. Thank you, JP Simons. Now we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any amendments? JP Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. I do have an amendment. If we could add, before reading number 8, I'd like for Assessor Hill to come in and share with us a national recognition one of his employees received during that time. So I'd like to have that before
I have a
number
motion
8.
to amend the agenda for a presentation by Russell Hill, Assessor Hill, second by JP Lemming. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We have amended the agenda and we'll add a new item number 8. JP Koger.
Thank you, Judge. I have two things. First of all, the ordinance which I was sponsoring, which is agenda item 19, I would like to table that into March because I understand that will give the programmer and the vendor enough time to come up with a solution that we might be able to do what I wanted to do with publishing the ordinances and the resolutions and the contracts without even having an ordinance. It can be done with just a project. And so I would like to work with them on doing that and table it until March of 2023.
I have a motion to postpone item number 19 until the March Quorum Court meeting?
March of 2023 for the Quorum Court meeting.
Quorum Court meeting by JP Koger, second by JP Simons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 19 will be postponed until March.
Yes, and my second item, I would like to add at the end of the meeting, I would like to make a motion to add at the end of this agenda a 30-minute discussion period where we can all, if we have questions or concerns, like for instance, I'm concerned about how do I get an appointment with the county judge? If I want to communicate with the other JPs and provide information concerning pretrial services, for instance, how do I do that without violating FOIA? And if I or any JP wanted to call a special meeting, it takes a 2/3 majority to do that. How do we do that without violating FOIA?
Well, first I would say that we're going to go over some of that this evening, so I don't know that the comment time is necessary.
Well, let's just say that I'd like to make that motion, and if we go over it, then it's not necessary, then I'll remove it.
I have a motion to add a discussion item as new item number 19 by JP Koger to review.
Well, just a general discussion, let's say, so that the public can hear it too and be involved.
Potpourri.
I'm sorry?
Potpourri. We'll call it just the potpourri discussion item.
Okay.
Okay.
But is it,
Motion,
it's important.
motion by JP Koger. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by JP, was that JP Hires? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion fails.
No, I want a voice vote, please.
Sure.
Ms. Myra, will you call a roll, please?
David Wilson. No. Sean Simons. No, Fred Anderson. No. Kyle Lyons. No. Lisa Ecke. No. Charles Dean. No. Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Beth Koger.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
No, ma'am.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford.
Yes.
Willie Lemming.
No.
Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
That motion fails. We'll move back to the the adoption of the agenda as amended for the two items that were added. I have a motion by J.P. Lemming, second by J.P. Ecke. All those in favor? Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Preliminary motions. J.P. Ecke,
In honor of our former colleague, Sam Duncan, I make a motion that all ordinances and resolutions be read by title only.
I have a motion by J.P. Ecke to read ordinances and resolutions by title only. Second by J.P. Lemming. All those in favor? Those opposed? Ordinances and resolutions will be made by title only, will be read by title only. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. We have a 15-minute public comment period with a limit of 3 minutes per individual. We ask when you approach the mic, please state your name and where you're from. Public comments. Hold on just a second. There's a button there that looks like a person on there. If you push that for us, it might be a blank. Thank you, J.P. Pond.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Lou Reed Sharp. I'm from Tawnytown, Arkansas, and I would respectfully wanted to address the court because one, it's a new administration, and I went around and introduced myself, and you know, everybody seems very congenial, and I'm very excited for the new leadership. We have a vacancy for JP1, and the last time we had a vacancy when JP Yanez resigned, Governor Hutchinson appointed the losing candidate, who was Billy Ushery at that time, and so precedent was kind of set. Sarah Hampton was our candidate, and I would hope the court, if the governor calls you and asks for input, she's gone through the process and applied through the board of committees for you all to consider her favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments. Seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. They were emailed out to the JPs, and they're also in this packet. If there are no corrections, the minutes are approved. JP Washington.
Thank you, Judge Deakins. I have one correction. On line 112, there is no vote noted for JP Rio Stafford.
JP Washington, do you have the correction? Do you know what that vote was?
No, I just noticed that there was nothing there.
Okay. Do you have that ready?
It's a no. It's a no.
It's a no vote.
Yes.
So I'll have a motion to correct it to a no by JP Washington. Okay, second? Second by JP Rio Stafford. All in favor? Those opposed? The minutes have been corrected. Any further corrections? Okay, those minutes will be accepted. All right. Number 7, County Judge's Report. I've asked Counselor Lester to lead off tonight and give him the floor, and he's going to go over a few things for you guys organizationally. And then I think feel free to ask him questions if you have them, and that's the way we'll start the Judge's Report this evening. Counselor Lester?
Thank you, Judge. So I want to go over 3 different things from, first off, go a little bit of basics on FOIA for everybody, followed by kind of Robert's Rules and the Quorum Court procedures. And for those that have been on the court, maybe a refresher, and for those that are new, hopefully glean some information. So FOIA requires Arkansas Freedom of Information Act requires that all records that are required to be kept or are otherwise kept and that constitute a record of the performance or the lack of performance of an official function that are carried out by a public official be made available to the public. It's important to note on this that those records, it's regardless of the location of the record. For example, if you are conducting or using a personal cell phone to send text messages regarding official county business or any county business that you have before you or will have before you or may have had before you, that is a public record, even though it is on a personal cell phone. Personal emails are the same way. To add to that, on the flip side, anything that's done on a personal email that has nothing to do with county business is not a public record, and therefore it's not subject to FOIA. So just wanted to let everybody know how that works on your public and private emails and your cell phones. FOIA applies to the custodian of record, which means that you have to be the person that is the custodian that has access to those records, not just access, but you have control. You are the custodian of all of your own emails. You are the custodian of all of your own text messages. You are the custodian of any document that you have in your possession. The county judge, IT department are not the custodians of those records. If you receive a FOIA request for emails, if you're conducting all of your emails on your official emails and county business with your county email address, you can always send a request to the IT department to ask them to pull all those pertinent emails. They will do so. They will either provide them to you or at your discretion make them available to the requester. And so I just want to let everyone know they will not pull those without you asking them. It is your duty as a public official to see to it that the requests are fulfilled. All meetings of the governing bodies of the county are open meetings. Kind of goes without saying. In the event that there is an emergency meeting or a special meeting called, it is the responsibility of the person calling that meeting to notify the appropriate media. So regular meetings have regular notice that are given out to those that request. Special and emergency meetings, you have to notify the media. If you call a meeting for whatever reason and you need some information on who to notify, you can always talk to the Quorum Court Secretary about who the media is that is entitled to notice on that. You have to give at least 2 hours notice before the meeting occurs. Note that to JP's meeting to discuss county business there's an AG's opinion that says it may not necessarily constitute a violation of FOIA, but I would caution you, always err on the side of caution that if you're going to get together with another JP, I would notify the media that you're doing so that they have an opportunity to visit as well. And that's what I'm talking about, a special meeting. You don't have to notify anybody other than the media, but those are special meetings that are called. You do have to notify the media of those. It's then up to the media to notify the public. With that being said, if you send an email out and you do not ask for or request or invite responses back, that is not a violation of FOIA. If you were to type a letter and send it via snail mail to every JP, and it just says, hey, here's my opinion, here's what's going on, that is not a violation of FOIA. FOIA is when you get into a back and forth, that constitutes a meeting. If there's an open back and forth discussion. So those communications would be subject to the public records section of FOIA, but not necessarily to a public meeting of FOIA. So I think those are the main things to think about with FOIA. If you have any questions about any of that, or you ever have something that comes up, feel free to give me a call, and I'll happily give you my opinion and kind of a best practices on anything like that arises. The Quorum Court has adopted Robert's Rules of Order in its most recent edition, which is the 12th edition, as the governing procedures for all of our meetings. Robert's rules will apply where state law does not apply. And so the thing to remember about that is there are certain things in state law that trump Robert's rules. For example, to pass an ordinance, it requires a majority of the total body of members, not just those present, in order to pass an ordinance, unless it's an emergency or appropriation ordinance, and that takes 2/3 vote of the total body, which is different than what Roberts requires. But with that, note that with Roberts, in order to speak in a meeting, you must be recognized by the chair or by the presiding officer. In this case, that's the county judge for all quorum court meetings. There can be one main motion and two amendments to the main motion on the floor at one time. When you get to one main motion and two amendments, we then have to start taking care of the amendments in order to continue other amendments. The presiding officer shall rule on all disputes, so any points of order will be made to the presiding officer. Any disagreement from there can then be appealed to the entire body. It will then go to the entire body. The body will vote, just like anything else, and the final vote of the body is the rule. Okay? So it's regardless of if it follows Roberts or not, you all are the final vote on those procedures. Please note that the decorum of Roberts requires that each member address the speaker directly and not address each other. Privilege versus subsidiary motions. So we have privilege motions or motions that take precedent over all the other motions. Those motions are a motion to adjourn, a motion to recess, to raise a question of privilege, or call the orders of the day, which means to get back into order as the agenda. Then you start with your subsidiary motions, a motion to lay on the table, which is to put something off in a meeting and bring it back up at that meeting. To postpone is to put it off for another meeting. Move the previous question, which is basically a motion to end debate. In the event that a motion to move the previous question is made and it requires a two-thirds vote that votes on it, that will end the debate of the quorum court. But under state law, you still have to give the public time to comment before the final passage of any ordinance. And then limit or extend the time of debate. All of those that I talked about are not debatable. So once those are made, those motions are not something that the body can debate on. They have to be voted on immediately. Postpone to a certain time, refer to a committee, a motion to amend, to postpone indefinitely are all subsidiary motions, and they are all debatable as well as the main motion that's on the floor. I have some books, if anybody doesn't have one, of kind of an abridged version of Robert's Rules. It's a little yellow book. It's not too terribly thick. It's a pretty easy read that goes along with the new edition. If anybody would like one of those, let me know, and I'll be happy to provide one to you. As far as some of our local rules that have been passed by the quorum court, each member may speak up to 2 times on any issue for up to 5 minutes. You don't get to reserve that time. You have 5 minutes per speaking time, and once you've spoken for twice on an issue, you're no longer allowed unless the rules are suspended and more time or more chances are given to speak. Members of the public may speak once for up to 3 minutes for a total of 12 minutes unless the time is extended. About the ordinances, and I had some questions on this, ordinances have to be presented to the county attorney, to my office, at least 5 days prior to the committee meeting at which you plan to introduce the ordinance. If they're not, an ordinance that's not presented within those at least 5 days out will not be on that month's committee meeting. We'll have to wait till the next month. However, any ordinance or any item may be added to the agenda of the quorum court or a committee agenda by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the committee or 2/3 vote of the whole quorum court. The only exception to those are CUP ordinances. A lot of times we'll have a planning board meeting will occur on a Thursday, exactly 1 week prior to the quorum court meeting, and because of the nature of those, if there's no controversy, it's not contested, in order to let people get going with their projects, because usually there's a lot of money tied up in those, the quorum court has decided to exempt those. They will go on a quorum court meeting. They do not have to go to a committee meeting. They go straight to quorum court. Also, one of our local rules is once an ordinance is introduced, if it fails to pass, it cannot be reintroduced for a period of at least 1 year unless it's an appropriation ordinance. The quorum court meetings have been established for the 3rd Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Also, there's ordinances. Ordinances are laws that are passed. Resolutions are non-binding statements that the quorum court can put out. Only an ordinance can amend an ordinance. Only a resolution can amend a resolution. The law requires that the votes, yes, no votes, are called before the passage of any ordinance or resolution. An abstain vote counts as a no vote. Under Arkansas law, we only count really the yes votes, and so you have to have a majority of the entire body on a regular ordinance, or 2/3 in order to pass an appropriation ordinance without going on to additional readings. Now, an appropriation ordinance that fails to get 2/3 vote on the first reading will then go on to a second and third vote. At the third vote, if it only has to have a simple majority vote. At the second reading, if it gets 2/3 vote, it can pass without moving on to a third reading. Emergency ordinances require 2/3 vote to pass. It's a state law. Let's see. Appropriation ordinances and emergency ordinances become effective immediately upon passage, whereas non-emergency and non-appropriation ordinances become effective after 30 days of the vote. I think that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Counselor Lester. I just want to say that Counselor Lester's here to help us. He's here to serve you guys, so please use him as a resource and feel free to reach out for questions or anything you have. JP Pond.
Yes, sir, I would like to ask on one issue, the issue where if an ordinance fails to pass, and it cannot be brought back up for a year, if a no voter has to bring it back up and gets it a second by another no voter, can that be voted on to bring it back up?
So that a motion to reconsider must be made in the same meeting as the vote, and it's only someone in the majority that can make that motion.
Okay.
But once the meeting is over, then it cannot be brought back up.
Thank you, Counselor Lester. With that, I'm going to move on to some additional notes. First of all, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the public for being here tonight. You guys, we're here to serve you. It's my thought that the citizen is the highest office in our elected system, and we've all subjected ourselves to serve you, and so I want to thank you for taking the time. I also want to thank every one of our new justices and our returning justices. I appreciate you guys stepping up and running for office and being here to help us lead our county. You know, we're going to see some amazing challenges in this county over the next term. You know, we continue to have issues with our jail. Roads is always going to be a big deal, and just our growth is going to present us some challenges. But I feel like there is no other place in the world I'd rather do this than Washington County, Arkansas, and I hope you feel the same way. And I'm really excited to work with each one of you to progress us down the road. I want to say this. I want us all to commit to each other, to be respectful and conduct these meetings with the notion that our public is watching and our employees are watching. So I make that commitment to you. Let's always be respectful and orderly. Let's have robust debate, and let's disagree, but let's always do that respectfully, and then let's take the vote and move down the road. I'm going to make that commitment to you guys. I'm going to do the best I can to run these meetings fairly. I ask for grace in that. You know, I'm not perfect, so please just, it's my goal, and I want you to know where my heart's at with that. We can have a tremendous amount of effect on the government in the next few years. And I have never been so convinced after talking to all of our employees, after some of the salary stuff we went through towards the end of last year, how many of them watch us on these meetings. So I also ask you always keep that in mind, that they're watching, they have faith in you, and they need you to support them. With that, I want to move on to a few things just to keep you guys apprised. This is for your situational awareness. As many of you know, on Christmas Eve day, we had a fire sprinkler break in the first floor of the courthouse and flooded that entire first floor. So luckily, I think our server room was okay. That would have been a whole new level of damage. But if you tour that right now, we've removed the bottom 2 feet of sheetrock, and we're doing some remediation stuff, trying to dry that all out. So there's some construction. I want to thank the prosecutor's office, Treasurer Hill's office, the Election Commission, and IT, who are housed on that first floor, for just being patient with us. It's very inconvenient. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of space to relocate those people, you know, while this work's going on, so I appreciate their patience. I also wanted to give a special shout out to our new Chief of Staff, Lance Johnson. That's his wheelhouse. I feel blessed to have him, since we got that opportunity to serve in that manner, that he's down there on the ground. That's where his professional experience comes from, and I think we're making good headway there. I want to announce that the last few years, we've received we were awarded one of the top transparent counties in the state of Arkansas by the Arkansas Center of Research in Economics from the University of Central Arkansas. We've received that award again for this year. And so that's a testament to our entire staff at the county who's committed to being open and transparent about our business, and especially our IT team who posts a lot of us information on the website. And so that's something that we should all be proud of. And I'm, a lot of that happened on the last administration's watch. So I think it's important that we recognize that and their efforts and see that as a new deal. We have several job openings in the county. I want to be selfish for a minute and say that, the financial discipline and the budgeting is one of the cornerstones of our county. We have a comptroller position open, so if anybody knows anybody, please send them our way. We're looking for some good people to join our team. But also, we're in a new era after we've adjusted our salaries to where I think we're more competitive with the market. So please, if you have friends or family that are looking to join a great organization, visit our website, hit the jobs tab, and there's several opportunities listed there. The comptroller is a critical hire, and so that's what I highlight this evening. Finally, I have some board appointments to make. First of all, on the Rural Development Authority Board, I am appointing Mike Overton, Steve Gunderson, Jim Wilson, Jeff Hawkins, and Larry Walker. And on the Washington Water Authority Board, I'm appointing John Everett, David Bollinger, Bo Speed, Larry DeLozier, Doug Chambers, Nathan Price, and Mick Wagner. And I need a motion to approve those appointments from the Quorum Court. I have a motion to approve those appointments by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Dennis. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. And that will conclude the judge's report. Moving on to new item number 8, which was an employee recognition by J.P. Ecke. J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. Last year, serving as chairman of the Personnel Committee, the HR Director, Ms. Patty Burchett, and I wanted to do a Employee Recognition of the Month award. And we started engaging in conversations back in October, reached out to a few elected officials, and they were very excited because they feel that our employees should be recognized for the outstanding work that they do and the value that they bring to Washington County. And so kicking it off this year is our assessor, Russell Hill, and he wants to comment on an outstanding award that one of his employees
we talk about the value of our county employees, and I really appreciate the Quorum Court for that incredible job that you did on giving those substantial increases to all the county employees across the board. So we thank you again for that. They really appreciate it. We had one that was recognized across the state, Dan Seipert. He's my chief deputy in the assessor's office, and during our state meeting with the assessors, we have what's called the Marvin C. Russell Award for Outstanding Professional Contribution. Marvin C. Russell, during his tenure as the Director of Assessment Coordination Department, was instrumental in Arkansas furthering its mission with the International Association of Assessing Officers, referred to as the IAAO. The mission of the IAAO, we call it the IAAO, but is to promote innovation, excellence in property appraisal and property tax policy and administration through the professional development, education, research, and technical assistance. In honor of Mr. Russell's dedication to the assessment profession, the Marvin C. Russell Award was developed a number of years ago by the Arkansas chapter of the International Association of Assessing Officers. This award is presented annually to a person who has made a significant professional contribution to the field of property assessment in the state of Arkansas. And this past year, Dan Seipert was acknowledged for that, for his data analysis and statistics, which really got the state out of a jam, and he performed that for the entire state of Arkansas, actually for the last 2 years, working on the side for that. So it was presented to him for doing an outstanding job, and we thank Dan Seipert for that. So, yep. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Mr. Judge,
J.P. Ecke?
I'd be remiss to say not to say thank you to the Washington County Extension Services and their employees who provided us with the snacks. It's always a delight to see all the Washington County Cooperative executive officers and the 4-H'ers and the moms and dads that support and are investing in the next generation. And I see them out there, and I want to say thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, JP Ecke. All right. Item number 9 on the amended agenda. Every year we receive a review of the prosecuting attorney's hot check fee fund, and this year we have a returning prosecuting attorney, Matt Durrett.
Thank you, Judge. For, excuse me, for those of you who are new, this is just something that is by statute presented every year. It's just the accounting of our hot check fee collection fund. Just to let you know what it is, when hot checks are still written, not a whole lot of them, but when they come into our office by statute, there's a fee, there's a merchant fee, and there's a prosecutor fee. That goes into a fund where we can use it for law enforcement or prosecutorial purposes, but it also requires us to provide an accounting to the quorum court. And so you have in your packet our beginning balance, the total fees collected, the expenses, and the ending balance. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but if anyone has any questions about any specific item on there, I'd be more than happy to answer it. Okay.
Any questions for prosecuting attorney Durrett? Thank you, sir.
Okay,
We
thank you.
appreciate you. Item number 10 on our amended agenda is an ordinance denying a conditional use permit recommended for denial by the Planning and Zoning Board, J&J Concrete, item 22-0-114. I want to speak to this a little bit. This was in my former JP district, and I initiated this ordinance. It's on its 3rd and final reading. This is a project that was denied by the planning board by a vote 6-1. I felt that there were not enough conditions on this, and I felt also that the applicant was not very compliant with our county planning. And so now I'm going to hand it off to JP Lyons if he has any further comments on this this evening.
Thank you, Judge. Not a lot of comments. I reviewed the packet based on the information and would make a motion that we approve this ordinance.
I have a motion to approve the ordinance by JP Lyons, a second by JP Anderson. Any further discussion? JP Koger?
Are we going to hear from the applicants? Because I have some questions for the applicants and for the owner, from the other people if they're here.
I mean, tonight we're just talking about this ordinance. The appeal's already happened, so I understand that there's a little bit of a disconnect there. They can certainly come up in public comments and be heard.
They can't come up now?
No.
Okay.
JP Pond?
To clarify, voting for this ordinance it's an ordinance to deny, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you vote yes, you're voting no. Okay.
If you vote yes, you're voting to deny
Yes.
the conditional use permit. JP Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I know we had a lot of robust discussion last time, and their attorney answered a lot of the questions. It was still unclear to me that J&J Concrete does not need a CUP because they live where they house their vehicles, and there is no business to conduct there at their houses. But when they go outside to service their vehicles or whatever, the noise did disturb their neighbors. I believe that that was part of it. I am conflicted with this because in denying this family a CUP, which I don't even know they really need because they go out to job sites to perform that and they have that business license. But to deny this is to deny a family from making income and sustaining their families. And everybody that works for them will no longer be able to provide an income for their families because they don't have this business anymore, and so on and so forth. I believe in property rights. If they have their houses there, and that's where they house their vehicles. What I don't understand is we should not arbitrarily and capriciously determine who can and who cannot own a business out in that area, seeing that there's several people that have their businesses out in that area. And why are we selecting J&J Concrete that they can't have their business? Is this the third and final reading? I'm in favor of the family, and because I believe in property rights, and if they bought houses, I believe there's 3 homes out on that property, and they house their work vehicles out in one of those areas, and to say that, no, you can't do that, is infringing on their constitutional rights and their ability to work and provide for their families. So I disagree with the planning, but I still don't think they need a CUP to house their vehicles out where they do, because they go to job sites to pour concrete. They're not pouring concrete at their home or their residence. So I'm in favor of the business owner, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Judge.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Judge, and welcome to your new positions.
Yeah.
So, I'm afraid this is a very slippery slope, and I've thought about it hard and long, and I'll be voting no against it, because I feel like, when do we start going to the county and saying, you can have a business, but you can't? There's no way you can have one because of this or that. And so I think once we go down that slippery slope, it's hard to stop. So when do we say, okay, it's okay for this concrete pumper to have his truck parked at his home whenever there's lots of space, or it may be, or doesn't have a neighbor that has a shared drive? And so I'll be voting no, and I just felt like I owed it to the court to explain why. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Dennis. J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important for myself and my colleagues on this court to remember that we're here to consider the recommendation of the planning. We don't have the expertise that that body has. And if every decision is based off of our whim, then what's the point of having a planning department? So a 6-1 vote from the professionals on our planning board tells me all I need to know. There must be a pretty strong articulation as to why they got it wrong for me to overturn their recommendation. That's my thought process.
Thank you, J.P. Simons. J.P. Koger.
Thank you, Judge. First of all, I just want to make clear a few things that have been said. They do not park their cement trucks on the property. Those trucks, they don't own cement trucks. I'm talking about the trucks that turn, where they turn the concrete. What they do park there are pumps, and they wash them, but they don't run them while they're there because there's nothing to pump. Those pumps pump the concrete from the trucks into the driveway or wherever they're going. There's also, in one house, in the gray house, there's a husband and wife and 2 children. And the next house, where there's the 2 wooden doors, there's a husband and wife and 2 children. And then in what we're calling the shop, it's like a metal building, but a mother and father and their daughter and son live there in that what is really a metal building. But that's where, when you see pictures of the pumps, that's what I'm talking about. So the applicants bought this property according to the tax records in 2020, and the next door neighbors bought their property the following year. So I assume that when they bought the property, they knew about this easement that was across the land. When I went out there, there's a gate put across the land. You can't, when you turn off Shirley Road to go east, you can't get to the property unless you know the combination to the gate. So the people who own the house, when you go in on the right, the Miltons, which I understand are the people who were contesting this mostly, their house is for sale. And I looked online, and it shows that the sale is pending, so I assume that they're gonna be leaving there. Also, there was an order filed yesterday in Washington County Circuit Court in a case where they agreed to remove the gate and it agreed to remove some of the landscaping, where there's some large boulders, excuse me, and if you're not careful, you could run into those boulders or back over one of them. But those three houses, I mean, where everyone lives, they do have trucks, but that come and go, but it's like 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. according to what I've been told, and it's their business truck. I mean, they're going to work or they're going to school. You know, it's not like they're operating a business there, like J.P. Ecke said. They're not doing that. Let's see what else I would like to bring up here. Just a minute. So I think I don't know how to do this now because the ordinance says to deny, but I would like to make a motion that we approve it. That we approve the conditional use.
Well, we'll deal with the motion on the floor first.
Okay.
JP Pond?
We've been through this discussion before, and the problem is those are residential drives, and the equipment that they're pulling back and forth in there it's overusing residential drives. And what we're talking about doing, if we approve their conditional use, we would be approving, we'd be saying it's okay to use those residential drives for commercial use. And those drives are inadequate for that. The roads into that are inadequate for that. And I'm very concerned about this, and I understand very much both sides of it, but it's been enough traffic back and forth that neighbors have been disturbed, and we even have some neighbors that have gone so far as to put their home up for sale to try to get out of it, to try to get in another area that will be residential and not an area that is maybe gradually becoming commercial. And it's, like I said, it's being used commercially with only residential infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Pond. JP Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I apologize for asking to speak again on this, but I missed my third point. And I would recommend that J&J Concrete donate the concrete and services to fortify the driveway. If it's being cracked or whatever, be a good neighbor and say, you know what, we're going to fix it. That's exactly what we do. We have a concrete business, and we'll fortify it and we'll fix it so that way our trucks won't have any problems going back and forth. So I would make that recommendation to the company. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, JP Ecke. JP Koger, you're asking to be recognized, but you've already spoken twice to this issue, so I'll need somebody to make a motion to suspend the rules, and I'll need a second. I have a motion to suspend the rules by JP Pond, second by JP Hires. All those in favor? Those opposed? JP Koger, you have the floor.
Thank you, Judge. I would just want to say, with regard to the road or whatever that we've been talking about, the road that we're talking about comes off Shirley Road and it stops in front of the house where the Miltons live. Where in front of this property where we're talking about, it's just a gravel road. There's no concrete. It's just gravel that has been pounded down. So that's all. And thank you.
Thank you, JP Koger. Any further discussion on this item? Any public comments? Seeing none, I'm going to bring the question. Come on. Please state your name. We have 12 minutes with 3 minutes per person.
Hello, my name is Jessica Serrano, and I am the applicant for the CUP. I just wanted to answer a question about the heavy equipment. We don't bring in any heavy equipment. We don't bring in any bulldozers or anything like that. What we do is the pumps are trailers, so just like a personal use trailer. That's all we bring in. And yes, thank you for the clarification. The road, it's a gravel road, so there's no concrete that has been cracked. The Meltons did put down asphalt, but the asphalt's still intact. There hasn't been any damage to it. That's all.
Thank you. Additional public comments? Please state your name and where you're from, sir.
Bryce Gerlach. I'm from 20074 Sherry Road. I'm at the south part of this, so past the 3 residences that we're talking about. We've talked about the gravel road right there. I paid to build it myself. And since this has been going on, the north half of that has been degraded quite a bit. We've went together on some rock, but I have to initiate those conversations. They aren't proactive in maintaining the northern side of the road. So yeah, it is, degrading the road. It may not be cracking concrete. I'd love it if we could have a nice drive all the way down. I'd be for that if they'd be up for it. A couple other things, the inadequacies of the road. Sherry Road coming in is very narrow. You can hardly have 2 vehicles side by side, and they drive big trucks. So I've been forced to the side of the road. My wife's been forced to the side of the road. And they're pulling onto a narrow road with trailers. An accident's bound to happen at some point. Also, not all employees reside there. They have employees coming from off-site, parking their vehicles here, servicing from there. So it's not just someone parking their vehicle at home and driving from there. There are others coming onto the property. So those are really the big things. But I do want to echo the comments about the planning committee. Voted this down fairly unanimously because of the safety issues and the inadequacy of the roads. This is a shared easement of 7 properties that was, I built it. When I built the road going south, I told them this is going to be light traffic, 3 to 4 cars, and we're way past that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public comments? No. Public comments? All right, we'll bring the question to the body. I have a motion to, JP Ecke, you're out of order. I have a motion to pass item number 10, the denial of the CUP by JP Lyons, a second by JP Anderson. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes, ma'am. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. No. Charles Dean. Yes, ma'am. Chandra Washington. No. Beth Koger. No. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. No. Willie Lemming. Abstain. Gary Ricker. Yes. Butch Pond.
Keep that vote open for just a second, will you, Ms. Meyer? Justices, if you look on your microphone base, you will see flashing buttons. The plus green sign will be a vote yes. The negative, the red minus sign will be no. I show that motion carries. So item number 10 will be adopted. Amended item number 11. Counselor Lester, will you read that ordinance by title only, please?
A resolution of the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, expressing appreciation to the voting center facilities in Washington County.
Thank you, Counselor Lester. I have asked J.P. Washington to introduce this ordinance this evening. J.P. Washington?
Thank you, excuse me, Judge Deakins. I think that we all will agree that voting is our civic responsibility, and this resolution shows our appreciation to those facilities who either suspended or amended their normal day-to-day functions to create centers so that the citizens of Washington County could have multiple places to vote. So I move passage of this resolution.
I have a motion to pass. I'm sorry. Amended item number 11 by J.P. Washington, a second by J.P. Lemming. Any discussion? Any public comments? Please state your name and where you're from.
My name is Jennifer Price, and I am from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I'm also the Director of Elections for Washington County. So I appreciate you all taking this up because a lot of times we thank all of our poll workers and everyone who actually is working at the polls, but our facilities are just as important. And they do, help us out by suspending activities, postponing activities. Some of them actually give up rental weekends instead of, being able to rent it out for birthday parties or events. They allow us to use those facilities on those Saturdays, especially during early voting. So we just want to, give a, huge thank you to all of those facilities. And I did also fail to include the Prairie Grove Telephone Company. If you know anyone that works there, they also provide free of charge for our rural polling locations on that side of the county so that we can actually operate vote centers. They spend a day with us setting up all of the Wi-Fi for us and allowing us the ability to be able to communicate to the other polling locations. So that's just another one of the many, individuals that help us out at the polls on Election Day. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Price. Additional public comments? Okay, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 11 by J.P. Washington, a second by J.P. Lemming. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson.
Yes.
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
J.P. Dennis, did you have something you wanted to say? A round of applause. A round of Item number 12. Counselor Lester, will you read that resolution by title only?
A resolution declaring a vacancy in Quorum Court District 1.
J.P. Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Our former duly re-elected JP in District 1, Lance Johnson, has been called upon to use his professional expertise as our county chief of staff. And I'm excited about his opportunity, but unfortunately, him stepping down from the Quorum Court leaves a vacancy. So this resolution declares that vacancy and moves that to our governor to appoint.
Do you have a motion? I have a motion to pass item number 12 by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Lemming. Any further discussion of item number 12? J.P. Koger?
I just have a question, Judge.
You got to cue your mic again. Once it's green, leave it. J.P. Koger?
Okay, I just have a question, Judge. So, the governor decides, is that correct?
That is correct. The
Okay.
governor will appoint this position.
Will the governor reach out to you or to somebody in Washington County, or how does that work?
The governor's team reaches out for recommendations, but I have to stress that that decision's solely left to our new governor, Sarah Sanders. JP Anderson?
Yes, there is a, excuse me, there is a way to get online to be able to be in consideration for that appointment. And so you can fill that out, and it's very easy to just get online. For people that want to be what am I trying to say? Considered. Considered, thank you. It's considered for that, so that's.
Any further discussion? Item number 12. Public comments. Good evening. Please state your name and where you're from.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Hampton. I live in District 1. I just wanted to introduce myself to the court and to the public as the candidate for JP District 1 that lost against Lance Johnson. I have been a lifelong resident of Washington County, and I had put in online to be considered by the governor's office for his position, and I thank you so much for your time for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Any additional public comments?
Thank you, Judge.
For the record, one more time, state your name, where you're from.
I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. I'm nervous.
Remember, people might watch this in bits, so.
I forget,
yeah.
Sorry. My name's Lou Reed Sharp, and I live in Town, Arkansas. So I've been aware of the JP races and our concerns in Town for the last 4 or 5 years now. I know the process changed. Sarah has followed that process and applied through the board of committees. When I went online today, I couldn't figure out the process, like once you apply, how much time lapses before somebody's appointed. I just asked that Judge Deakins that you consider Sarah favorably if the governor contacts you, which I would assume that she would, because we have followed the process and the show of good faith and a willingness to work across the aisles. I hope you will consider Sarah. She worked hard and knocked doors and was out in the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Additional public comments?
Hello, my name's Annie Langston, and I live in Fayetteville. And I just want to say I've tried to work on a few campaigns and things in the past, and running for an election is a really hard job. Y'all all know that. And I think that she's already put in the big effort to show that she really does want to represent us and help y'all to run our county. And I wanted to just add my 2 cents in to say, and please, if you get a chance, recommend Ms. Hampton to the governor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langston. Additional public comments?
Hi, yes, I'm Leah Garrett. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I also would like you to really consider Sarah for the appointed position. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? If you want to make public comments too, you could get up here and form a line. Maybe we'll move through this quicker.
Next time I'll be careful to do that. Thank you, sir. My name is Gideon Durzon. Thank you. I am also from Fayetteville, and I live in District 1. I would like you to consider Sarah favorably if you speak to the governor, and I believe that she has a lot of things to bring to the table. I believe she is very thoughtful and cares very much about the people who live in her district. I did not know her before she ran, but I know her now, and I believe that's valuable.
Thank you so much. Public comments?
Hi, my name is Dawn Cannon, and I live in Washington County. I want to say thank you, congratulations to Mr. Ricker. He and I were running for the same seat, and he won, as well as the other people that ran. He and I wanted to use this opportunity to say justice of the peace is for county budget, which we all are mostly aware of that. It is a partisan position, which is kind of county government, county budget should not be blue or red per se, but it is in our county. And the person who won the governor did not win in Washington County, and that was a partisan race as well. Well, it's really hard to talk when you get in the seat. Thank you for your patience. And I would just like to say, as the person that also ran and lost, Sarah Hampton did put forth a big effort. She was in a different party than Mr. Johnson. Congratulations on his appointmentship from you. But just as before what the president had been set with Mr. Ussery being put into the position, even though he lost, I would like you to please consider Ms. Hampton for JP1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public comments? Okay, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 12 by J.P. Simons, a second by J.P. Lemming. Ms. Myra, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Yes. Chandra Washington. Yes. Beth Koger. Yes. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Yes. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
That motion carries. We will transmit that to the governor's desk as soon as possible. Item number 13. Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Henderson Project CUP.
J.P. Ricker, would you like to introduce this ordinance?
Yes, sir. I've checked with planning on this. There was a public meeting. There was no opposition to it. It's a small project out Campbell Loop, and I'd like to make a motion to pass it on the first reading. I'd also like to make a motion after that to suspend the rules and move to the second reading.
Okay. We'll take up we just need the motion to suspend the rules and move it to the second reading by J.P. Ricker, second by J.P. Lemming. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Counselor, will you read that ordinance by a second time by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Henderson Project CUP.
I'd like to make a motion to move it to the third and final reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move to the third and final reading by J.P. Ricker, second by J.P. Lyons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Counselor Lester, will you read that ordinance for a third time?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Henderson Project CUP.
I'd like to make a motion to pass that ordinance.
I have a motion to pass by J.P. Ricker, second by J.P. Lyons. Any further discussion or questions? J.P. Koger?
Okay, yes, I have no objection to this moving forward, but I want us to not make a habit of moving things forward. This one's I'm fine with because there's no objections, but I think it's dangerous when we start make a habit of moving stuff forward for 3 readings instead. Because for one thing, the public doesn't have the chance to come and speak that many times if we do it all at one time. And I think we get better information from the public when we allow them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Koger. J.P. Hires.
Thank you, Judge. I also really don't have a problem with this, but I just want to point out, how similar this explanation of what the CUP is to the one that was just overwhelmingly denied. And I'm struggling. I still don't understand what happened with the other one. A conditional use permit sought for the construction of a pole barn for 12 employees to report to work and take company vehicles into the Northwest Arkansas region and return at the end of the day. Seems a lot like the one that we just overwhelmingly said, no, you can't have that business. So that's really my only problem with it, is it feels a little hypocritical. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Hires. Any further discussion? Public comments?
Do I need to turn this? I'm good, okay. Sarah Moore, Fayetteville.
I've sat for the last several years really watching in great detail the goings-on of these meetings, and in particular the planning discussions. And in conversations throughout the region, from what I understand, several planners ago, the current zoning that's in place for Washington County was only thought of as a placeholder. And so then there was supposed to be due diligence and consideration to different zoning. We run into, unfortunately, this issue, where there's all this discretion around each one of these different uses because of the current zoning requirements. And so I just really want to encourage that be a project as we proceed into the next year. The region is continuing to grow. Fayetteville is continuing to grow. We're growing all into each other in this region. And so we're going to continue to see an influx of different uses for the land that's around Washington County outside of its incorporated areas. And so I just really like to encourage, there are a lot of institutions that are doing this work and are putting forward publications that could be very useful, like the Urban Land Institute, and would really like to offer a partnership and a bigger conversation about how we can maybe prevent what seems like what was pointed out by some of the JPs as a lot of kind of back and forth discussion in regard to how we have conversations about, who gets to have a business versus, this other person given the same zoning. So I appreciate you listening to me tonight, and I'd be very happy to be a part of those conversations ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Sorry, Your Honor. My name's Lou Reed Sharp, and I'm from Town, Arkansas, and I agree with what J.P. echoed earlier and J.P. Suki Hires. I first got involved with the Quorum Court and attending these meetings over these dirt mines and these rock quarries, right? And their businesses operating in neighborhoods, and there's these huge discussions at the Quorum Court and all these lawyers, and people's property rights aren't being valued necessarily. And I mean, it's a big deal. And so I kind of agree. I'm not sure that I understand. And I know you have to follow the rules and go through planning board. But it's hard to discern how one family's rights are respected and honored, it seems like, more than somebody else's. And that's all I've got to say. I just think proper rights, families' rights to own property and do what they want are important issues. And we just give more credence, it seems like, kind of willy-nilly sometimes. So I also would be interested in being involved in any conversations, especially in the rural areas, because building is going on massively out there, and it's all zoned agri, all of it. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Public comments.
Annie Langston, Fayetteville again. And I just want to say how much I appreciate Ms. Koger's comment that to not just do 3 readings in one night. I work 2 jobs, and I don't get to come very often. I wish I could come every third Thursday to this room. What y'all do is the most important thing to my life, to my family, to my community. I am a transplant to Fayetteville by choice. I don't want us to become an Austin. I don't want us to overgrow and allow some people to have businesses that ruin what we have here. We have a wonderful thing here. And so what y'all do is so important on these conditional use permits. And I think that they need to have full reading, full comment, full information. And like the other lady just said, there are so many environmental groups around here that are researching what is going on, and we don't need to kill the goose. Y'all help us, okay? And don't just do 3 readings in one night so that we don't know what in the world happened or why it happened. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Public comments.
Hi, my name is Dawn Cannon, and I live in Washington County. And I've only been attending these meetings for a year now, since last February. And I have noticed with the CUP readings, There has a lot to do with who is represented, which attorney comes to represent who is coming forth for the CUP versus maybe another CUP that's coming forth that doesn't have a lot of money to spend on an attorney to help them get the CUP passed. I know because the reason I got involved in government and was interested in coming to meetings before I decided to run for office, I worked for a law firm that charged $400, $600, $800 an hour, and I would read the CUPs and helping them make their binders to go to city council meetings and quorum court meetings, and that's how I first became introduced to county government, the quorum court meetings. So it seems that there is a disconnect between how much money a person or a business has and how much backing they have to be able to get that CUP passed. I don't come from money, I don't have a lot of money, and it's just unfortunate that sometimes the people with less money that are working really hard don't get their CUP passed for the disconnect of wealth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public comments. Okay, we'll take up the question. Amended item number 13, I had a motion to pass by J.P. Ricker, second, I believe, by J.P. Lyons. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Shonda Washington. Yes. Beth Koger. Yes. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, ma'am. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
Thank you. That motion carries. It will be approved. Amended item number 14. Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An emergency ordinance establishing standing committees of the Quorum Court and repealing ordinances 2017-1 and 2021-1.
J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. The previous court had decided through ordinance to structure 4 different committees and breaking those committees from the previous administration of some of those being committees of the whole to having 7 JPs per meeting. And this ordinance is first and foremost declaring the emergency, which allows this to go into effect immediately, which I believe is necessary. And second to that is moving from having 4 separate committees to consolidating some of those into 2 committees of the whole. And I think that serves several different positive purposes. I see no negatives here. First off, it introduces a level of efficiency into county government, and it allows us to come together, debate openly and robustly on these issues, and not have 4 different committees and the Quorum Court Committee each and every month. So it allows more efficient fiduciary expenditures on JP's time. So we get to come here and do the people's work and not have it broken up into 4 different committee meetings. It also gives us the opportunity to all be equally represented here. There was times where there was great input that was brought from JPs that weren't necessarily on a committee and therefore didn't have a voting option on that committee. So I love the opportunity here for us to start this new term in a unified, collaborative, focused vision for all of us to be represented on each and every committee. So I move that this ordinance pass.
We have a motion to pass item number 14 by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Dennis. J.P. Hires.
Thank you, Judge. I'm very pleased about this particular structuring of the committees personally. It was really hard, I think, for a lot of our districts who were not part of the budgeting committee, and that being one of our primary jobs as JPs, to not have that voice in that committee was really unfair, I felt, to some districts. So I'm really happy about this. I'm very pleased with this. I think it does a great job of bringing us together in better ways. So I'm very happy about this. Thank you.
Further discussion? I just want to say that I've tried to approach each one of you about this and quickly, without rehashing, I really felt last term too got a little heated in many terms. And so I want to communicate to all you that individually you've committed to me that we're here to work together and be respectful. And I appreciate each and one of you to do this. I know this is a big change, and I appreciate you being willing to take that on and do something different. So with that, public comments.
Thank you, Judge. Gladys Tiffany from Washington County. Nobody had said what the two committees are. I was just curious about how the committees were being divided up. I think it's a great idea. It's listed in the ordinance. Essentially what we're doing is we're making a finance and budget committee of the whole and another standing committee to handle what we're calling county services, which is essentially everything else. So just to clarify that for you. Additional public comments? All right, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass amended item number 14 by J.P. Simons, a second by J.P. Dennis. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Shonda Washington. Yes. Beth Koger. Yes. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, Butch Pond. Yes.
That motion carries. You, as a quorum court, are now organized, if you will, so look forward to that next week. Item number 15, Counselor, will you read this ordinance by title only?
An ordinance authorizing the county judge to enter into a contract for services with the Association of Arkansas Counties and appropriating $6,517 to be paid for membership therein.
The Association of Arkansas Counties is a tremendous resource for us. We use them for a lot of different things. Their guidance and their expertise is invaluable to us. You guys have went through that as new JPs. They had a training hosted for you guys. And I would like to ask, at the risk of putting you on the spot, JP Ecke, will you introduce this and maybe comment on your experience with the AAC?
Thank you, Judge. And yes, I will. The AAC does provide legislative education, training, and risk management, and so much more. It's a valuable tool to each county in Arkansas. There are 75 counties, elected officials, judges, sheriffs, justice of the peace, so on and so on. And they provide this training, keep us up in legislative updates, that we are apprised and educated and trained and ready to serve the citizens of this great state. They're a valuable organization and resource to all of us and to the officials as well. Therefore, Judge, I move that we approve, 15.1.
I have a motion to pass item number 15 by J.P. Ecke. I think I caught J.P. Lyons first for the second. Any further discussion? J.P. Koger?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify something. So Arkansas Statute 1420-107 says that if a county decides to participate with the Arkansas Association of Counties, that we have to pay, 1% of the general revenues received by the county from the county aid fund and the state treasury. So I'd just like to understand for myself. So is this $6,517 that's in the ordinance? Is that in addition to the 1% of the general revenues received by the county?
Counselor Lester, do you have any background on this?
No, this would be the amount that's required to be paid based on that calculation.
Okay, thank you.
J.P. Anderson?
I think one of the big factors here too is the risk management that we get from them. It probably would be worth more than what this is being paid here.
I think you're absolutely correct, sir. Yep. Any further discussion? Public comments? See, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 15 by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Lyons. Ms. Myra, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Pass.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 16, Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance amending ordinance 1982-7 to change the Washington County seal.
J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. This ordinance is aesthetic in nature. We're looking to update the county seal. Hasn't been updated in 40 years, and I think the main purpose behind this is to show our cooperation and collaboration with the municipalities that are within Washington County. I know a lot of the purview of the county is the unincorporated areas, as it should be in most cases, but we have to remember that we serve all of Washington County, all of the residences, and those within city limits as well. So the big ones, Fayetteville and Springdale, they are well represented, but some of our smaller cities sometimes feel like they don't always get love and attention, and so this seal represents our dedication to serving all of the residents of Washington County. So I approve, or I make a motion that I approve. I make a motion that we approve this.
I have a motion to pass item number 16. Oh, J.P. Simons, this is on its first reading.
I would make a motion that we suspend the rules and move this on to the second reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move to the second reading. Second by J.P. Lyons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Ms. Myra, will you please call a roll?
Okay, sorry. David Wilson.
Are we gonna get to speak or no?
You're right. Public comment occurs before the final passage. This is only on a motion to suspend the rules, where there is no public comment.
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes, ma'am. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Yes, Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Chandra Washington. No. Beth Koger. No. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. No. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, ma'am. Butch Pond.
Yes.
And that is to suspend the rules. Pass.
Thank you. J.P. Simons?
Thank you, Chair. One point I forgot.
I'm sorry, just a second. Let Counselor read it one more time.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure.
An ordinance amending ordinance 1982-7 to change the Washington County seal.
J.P. Simons?
Yeah, one additional point I failed to mention earlier. My only initial concern with this was the fiduciary aspect of changing all of the everything that the seal is on, and with discussions with Judge Deakins, this would only take place moving forward as we acquire new property, as we make updates and things like that. The only immediate financial impact would be stationary in nature and things like that. So from a fiduciary standpoint, that was my only concern, and that has been put to rest and is a non-issue for me. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move this to a third and final reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move to a third and final reading. Second by J.P. Anderson. The only thing I'll add to that is the time component for me is there is some things we need to order because we have had a change in administration and names and stuff like that. So it'd be nice to have this sealed so we could go ahead and order that stock. But that's my 2 cents for the evening. We had a motion to suspend the rules, move to third and final reading by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Anderson. Ms. Myra, will you please call roll?
David Wilson. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lines. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Pass.
Thank you. Counselor, will you read that for the third and final reading?
An ordinance amending ordinance 1982-7 to change the Washington County seal.
J.P. Simons?
I make a motion that we pass this ordinance.
I have a motion to pass item number 16 by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Lyons. Further discussion? J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I am in favor and will be voting yes in support of this because one of those shining stars represents the citizens of my city of Springdale. And every time I look at that new symbol and see that star with pride, I will think about my city of Springdale. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. J.P. Hires?
Thank you, Judge. I spoke to the judge today about this, and I want to let everybody know that, like, I understand his visual vision behind the symbol of bringing the cities together to work with the county, but there's a problem with it, and that problem is that we can't dictate how people see symbols, y'all, and I cannot vote for this. This is 13 stars in a circle is notoriously known through the Anti-Defamation League as a symbol of 2 different hate groups that are on their website. I know that's not the intention of this, but we don't have control over how people see it. So there's no way I can vote for this. I really wanted to maybe amend this, add a couple of stars to represent all 15 districts, take away the hate symbol piece of it. But so just letting you know that I can't vote for a known hate symbol through the Anti-Defamation League for 2 extremist groups that are functioning in the United States right now. Thanks.
Thank you, J.P. Hires. J.P. Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. To me, it's a lot about something so little, but at the same time, I want to talk in a practical way, and I use this humorous story, but at the same time, this is my mindset, and so I think you deserve to know how I feel. I pay attention to the road department. I pay attention to any county vehicles that are on the road. I was going west to I was in my district, and there was a vehicle that went by me extremely fast on MLK. And I thought, that is way too fast for a Washington County employee to be driving a vehicle and breaking the speed zone. And I was a little bit angry about it. So I speeded up to catch up with him, and I had a light that stopped him, and that helped me catch him. And I pulled up beside him, and I was going to take a picture of who it was, and I was going to report him. Well, guess what? It was the city of Fayetteville. There's not very much difference in the city of Fayetteville's emblem and the Washington County emblem. And so I didn't report him because I kind of felt like it wasn't any of my business, but at the same time, he was speeding. But when I'm out, I like to see what the road department's doing, what the Washington County sheriffs are doing. I like to see that, and it's nothing more than just an emblem to me that tells me it's Washington County. Many people will call me and say, hey, you know, here's the way they say it too. Hey, your road department's standing around leaning on a shovel. And I say, well, really, where did you see him at? Well, I saw him just off of MLK on Broyles Road. And I said, so you're sure it was Washington County? Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Well, Washington County doesn't work on the road, on Broyles Road. It's not theirs to work on. It was the city of Fayetteville again. So to have a little bit of a different identification between Fayetteville and Washington County, to me, is a good thing. I don't think of the hate thing. I don't think of the love thing. I just think of Washington County and the city of Fayetteville. I like to know the difference. And so it's not a big issue with me, one way or the other. I don't care if it's got 15 stars or 13 stars. The original colony had 13 stars on it, on the original flag, but I think it's much to do about nothing. I really do. I'll vote for it. Judge wants it, so I don't see any problem. I know he's not a racist. I know that what I read in the Facebook from the one, I will start to say gentleman, but that's not what he is. From that person that wrote what he wrote, would anybody like to read that out loud in public comments and read his comments to us about what he said about each of us and the judge? If you would, bring it forward and go ahead and read that, and that'll give us an idea of what you're thinking too. And you talk about hate on 13 stars. He didn't have 13 stars anywhere on his hate speech, but he had hate speech. Very plain, very simple. So yes, I'll vote twice on it, both times.
Thank you, J.P. Dennis. J.P. Lemming?
Thank you, Judge. Only thing I'd say, if we do remove some of these big ones like this, I would like for the county to make sure every individual in Washington County, or wherever, can have the opportunity to purchase one of them, not just throw them in the trash or not let certain people take them home. Bring them back to the county and let's sell them. Mark them surplus if we take the big ones down someday. I think that's the way to handle that instead of just give them to whoever and however. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Lemming. I can promise you that. Property control is one of my responsibilities as judge, and I'll do that. I'll also make the quick comment that I've been a little surprised now that I've paid more attention and moved around our county properties, how little we display our seal. You know, like this one, I believe on front is the state seal. And so a lot of our buildings display the state seal, and I think it's, you know, as we move forward, it's time for us to take pride in our county seal and start to display that. J.P. Koger?
Thank you, Judge. First of all, I have to say that someone in the county contacted me about this, and I had no idea that it was connected to anti-government groups or hate groups. So but this was a person who contacted me, so I did some research. I talked to her first, I did some research. And it's connected specifically to a group called the 3 Percenters, and that's an anti-government group. And the Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center has declared them to be a hate group, the 3 Percenters. And some of the stuff that they say and do is really bad. I just want to read a few of their statements here, and then I'll finish.
J.P. Ecke, you have a point of order?
I do, Judge.
Nope, just. Thank you, J.P. Ecke.
Point of order, the information that is going to be shared is not germane to the agenda or to the item that's discussed. Either you're for it or you're against it, but going off on detail of research and what this is and calling people 3 Percenters, if you do espouse this, is inappropriate and out of line. So I call point of order, it's not germane to the agenda.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. I tend to agree. I think we need to debate what's in the ordinance. The ordinance speaks for what this is, J.P. Koger. So do you have debate upon the ordinance and what's stated in the ordinance?
Yes, I do. Because the 13 stars is connected to hate groups, anti-government hate groups. And
Point of order, it's not, we're not connecting it to point groups, so it's not germane. Thank you.
I have a point of order, again, by J.P. Ecke. I would agree. Can we debate whether or not we want to change the seal by the stated objections, the stated objections in the ordinance?
I think I can do that, yes. So,
Will you please cue your mic one more time? Is it on there? J.P. JP Koger, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to say that I think this is a big deal. Words are important. Perception is important. Appearances, very important. If we are doing something that would harm a group or would make that group feel like we're not respecting them, that's a huge deal, and we should take that very seriously. I have been, as I say, I've been out in the county. I've been collecting signatures on petitions. I run into people everywhere across the county. Several people have mentioned this to me, so it is a big deal. And I would just also point out that here in Washington County, we're a party to this discussion, okay? So we're here, but we're gonna be submitting grants and applications to all across the country. They're gonna look at this, they're gonna see our seal, and they're gonna connect it. They're not gonna connect it to 13 cities in Washington County. I can promise you that. So it's really important how we're perceived by other people and by other groups, and especially even the people in our own county. So I'm going to vote against this, and I wonder why it's even here when we should be talking about things like why the jail is overcrowded.
Thank you, JP Koger. JP Washington.
Thank you, Judge. Excuse me, Judge Deakins. I would just like to encourage all of our colleagues to not conflate intent with impact. And I want to publicly say that I do not believe that there was anything nefarious about this proposed change. We know what the intent was. Judge Deakins explained to us that it did what it represented. However, we also have to consider the impact, because every person who is a citizen of Washington County may not be privy to the meaning of this. And because it is closely associated with something that could have a negative impact on the residents of Washington County, I think we owe it to them to also consider this as well. So maybe what it means to the greater public is not offensive to the individual members of this court, but we have to consider that it may be offensive to the people that we represent. And I will say that I have received several emails about this particular subject with people expressing how they feel about it. Now, as JP Hire said, we can't determine how someone decodes whatever information is presented. And my personal opinion is that if it's closely associated with something that could be offensive, let's go back to the drawing board and see what we can do to commemorate the 13 different cities of the county. And if there is another way to do this without having a negative impact on the citizens of Washington County that we were elected to represent, then let's do that.
Thank you, JP Washington. Justice Ricker.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Initially, I was looking at this mainly for the cost. That was my only issue with it. Our job is to make sure the county spends their money wisely. JP Simons addressed that. As long as we're not spending a fortune to try to change everything at one lick, I don't have a problem with it. Whether it's 13 stars or 15 stars, if they want to modify it, I don't care. You can find symbols that are symbols of a hate group for just about anything, I think, anymore. There's so many of them out there. I get an entire magazine every month that is full of nothing. That's from the Southern Poverty Law Center that has nothing but the hate groups across the nation. There's hundreds of them. I don't think that I don't think there's anything that we can do that symbolizes something that's not going to offend somebody somewhere.
Thank you, Justice Ricker. Justice Simons.
Thank you, Chair. I echo JP Ricker's comments, the frivolity of this, and it's a complete waste of time. 13 stars and a symbol are on the Betsy Ross flag, which is known to be the first flag of the United States. It's also represented on the seal of the Veteran of Foreign War, or Veteran Affairs. So by not passing this, we could offend every veteran in Washington County. If we want to extrapolate every would, could, might, may, we'd be here all night and we'd never re-legislate anything. So to a justice's point earlier, it is not our ability or our responsibility to determine how someone decodes symbolisms and esoteric value in symbols. We have stated what the intent is here. It is this body's responsibility to approve or deny the ordinance for whatever your personal beliefs or reasons, so be it. But I call the question.
I have a motion on the floor, call the previous question, I believe made by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Ecke. That's non-debatable, and requires a supermajority. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll? This is voting on the motion to call the question.
David Wilson.
Question. The yes vote is to call the question. Yes.
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
Motion carries. That will end debate. We'll move up to the question, and we'll move into public comments.
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm also currently one of the sitting Fayetteville City Council members for Ward 2. So we'd be a city that would be represented on this seal. And I do applaud the efforts by Judge Deakins, the intent behind it for this to be recognizing and trying to be collaborative and create unity amongst rural and municipalities. And I really appreciate the intent behind it. I just think sometimes the small things are the big things. And, you know, we have a very diverse population across Fayetteville and across Washington County. And something as small as a seal doesn't seem like it's a big deal. But whenever it did come forward and it created additional conversation in our community, I think it hopefully gives us pause when we get new information, that folks just have additional questions. Things aren't sitting quite right with them. And as folks that are making those decisions as elected leaders, it's incumbent upon us to listen to that feedback and to pause and have reflection before we move forward. And so I really am just asking, I think there's a great opportunity with your intent behind this to create this collaborative environment. I want that as a city of Fayetteville working with the county. I think there's a great opportunity to talk about how we design this. I understand that you have a need and urgency to order materials right now, and maybe that could be ordered under the current logo, and then there could be a order later with the new. But I think this is a great opportunity to explore it. We have incredible artists in our community that need employment, gainful employment. We have a really interesting network of different expertise with design skills. And, you know, we're a premier place to live in Arkansas and in the nation. And so I think it's actually creating a great opportunity for us to create something really great with a partnership in our community. And so I'd really just welcome this as an opportunity to create something even maybe better out of this situation. If you'd please consider just tabling for tonight and just creating a bigger conversation in our community about, you know, what we want our SIL to look like going forward to create this collaboration and community unity. Thank you.
Public comments.
Evelyn Rio Stafford, District 12, Fayetteville. Ms. Collins, could you bring up the image of the logo for us? Before J.P. Simon called the question, I actually was going to bring up some things that nobody has mentioned yet. I happen to run a marketing agency for the past 7 years, and we work with graphic designers. And I've talked to them about this proposed logo, you know, over the water cooler. And so some of the issues, you know, that have come up is that, there you go. So when you're taking the existing seal and adding an additional ring around it or an additional band around it, you're shrinking down the footprint. You know, to fit in the same footprint, you're shrinking down the original logo. And, you know, some folks have brought up a few issues with that. The drawing of the courthouse already has all these little tiny intricate details in there that are already difficult to make those show up in print. And when you're shrinking the whole thing down, you're making that problem even more difficult. So if anything needs to happen to this, it needs to be simplified, but we're making it more complicated by adding this whole other layer of sort of, you know, I don't want to denigrate whoever came up with this logo, but, you know, it's adding another layer of cruft around it, basically. The other issue is when you talk about the county vehicles, when you're shrinking the rest of that down, now Washington County, Arkansas, the words in the seal, we're making those smaller, which means they're going to be harder to read on passing trucks and things like that instead of simpler. If anything, the words should be on the outer band to make them the biggest thing on the logo. So a couple other things that folks brought up besides that is that we are a growing county. What happens if one of our other smaller unincorporated communities decides to incorporate? Are we going to have to redesign the whole thing all over again and reprint everything and do everything all over again to add another star, a 14th star? Or if a couple of municipalities decide to merge or, you know, something like that to take away a star, you know, we're adding this whole layer of unnecessary complication to me into this logo. We're making things more complex instead of more simple. And then finally, I just want to say there should be some way for us to acknowledge our unincorporated communities in the county. Places like Black Oak, Cane Hill. Cane Hill's a historic site that was, you know, in the Civil War. Some of these places,
Stafford, that's time.
okay,
If you'll wrap
some of
it
these
up, please.
places need to be honored as well, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public comments.
Thank you, Judge. My name is Dawn Cannon, and I live in Washington County, and I like to always find an opportunity to learn. Sometimes the opportunity is I've been told I need to learn when not to talk. This might be one of those times, but I appreciate you listening. I took the opportunity to learn about the other group that Ms. Hires mentioned, the two anti-defamation groups. First, I want to say, as far as symbols go, they might be simple and mean different things for different people, and we'll always find people are always going to be offended or not offended by something. Everyone's not always going to be happy. A good example is the rainbow. Noah's Ark, God said the rainbow was to represent he would never flood the earth again. So to Christians, the rainbow is a promise from God. To people that believe in same-sex love, the rainbow is a completely different symbol to them. Just an example. But I used the opportunity to look up the other group other than the 3%, and it's the Patriot Front. And I learned something, and I appreciate the time to share with you what I learned. The 13 Stars, the Patriot Front, is a white nationalist hate group that formed in the aftermath of the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017. The organization broke off from Vanguard America, a neo-Nazi group that participated in the chaotic demonstration. And Mr. J.P. Ricker brought up the fact that there are a lot of hate groups. There are a lot of hate groups.
You need to address the chair with
Oh,
your comments.
pardon me. I'm so
Yep.
sorry. I didn't realize I couldn't
No
look
problem.
at other people.
I don't think I
Thank you for
tipped you off yet.
Nope. Thank you for teaching me something. Mr. Ricker, pardon me, JP earlier in. I'm sorry. Could you explain to me what I did wrong if I said Ms. Hires earlier, but I couldn't say Ricker then?
I just wasn't caught up to the fact yet. It was my mistake, my oversight earlier, but
Oh, okay.
all public
So we're
comments need
both
to be
learning.
addressed to the
Okay,
chair.
well, I didn't mean to pick names. I was just trying to use examples from other people in the court, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Public comments.
Hello, Sarah Hampton, JP District 1. I grew up a lifelong resident of Washington County. Whenever I was a young child, I lived outside of the city limits, and we were just outside the Fayetteville city limits, just off of Porter Road, and we really liked being outside of the city limits. and we were really close to a lot of resources without having to be, a very far drive. And it was a great way to grow up, but I would hate for somebody who lives outside of the city limits to feel unincluded by this current symbol, because as it was pointed out previously, the 13 stars representing the cities is going to mean that any unincorporated territory of Washington County is just not represented. And I think that the people that live out in those rural areas who don't have a city that specifically is incorporated to support them also deserve to be highlighted even more so in our county. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Public comments. We have about 2.5 minutes left.
Hi, Debbie Dean from Fayetteville. And on that seal right there, there's 13 stars right on the front of it. And I'm thinking that what's the difference? Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Hi, Leah Garrett, Washington County. Sarah Hampton is right. I do think it doesn't represent all the rural sections of Washington County like Cane Hill. I also think that perception is reality, and the 13 stars is anti-government, a racist organization, and why would this government want something like that? Thank you.
Public comments. All right, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 16 by J.P. Simons, a second by J.P. Lyons. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Chandra Washington. No. Beth Koger. No. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. No. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes. Butch Pond.
Item number 16 is adopted. Item number 17, Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance creating the position of Director of Communications in the County Judge's budget for 2023.
J.P. Dennis, would you like to introduce this ordinance?
I would, sir. I think this is a very important job. I think it's one that we've needed for a long time. I know other previous judges have wanted to have it, but didn't get around to getting it done. So let's do it right now at the very beginning. So I move the adoption of item number 23-0-004 as a Director of Communications in the counties under the county judge's budget.
Thank you, J.P. Dennis. I have a motion to pass by J.P. Dennis, second by J.P. Pond. J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I'm in favor and will be voting yes on this ordinance because it is a needed position, and Washington County will benefit from a high-level skilled communications director, as they will manage the internal and external messaging of the county and official press releases. They will make sure that Washington County maintains a positive and transparent relationship with the media and our citizens. So I'm voting in favor. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. J.P. Koger?
Thank you, Judge. I just wonder how the other county judges have made it then without a communications director. And I wonder, have you had an unusual high number of media inquiries since the first of the year, since you've been?
No, but I would like to highlight that this job is not just to answer media inquiries. I think this is an opportunity for this person to come in and promote us as a county and to keep the public informed. I think we saw that during the pandemic. There was a lot of public health information that needed to be pushed out. We saw that with, if you want to go into our ARPA applications, that could have been promoted. I think this is just a way for us to keep the public informed. What is our road department doing? This is also going to be a shared service with other elected officials. So I think this is a nuts and bolts to, if I can, I'd use Collector Wood as an example. Our, taxes are due October 15th. We can push that out, be promoting that on our social media. So I hope you can see that I see it as a more dynamic position than just answering media inquiries.
Okay, you mentioned the road department. Does that mean that we could get updates from the road department on which roads they're gonna grade or tend to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you guys remember, but last spring during the heavy rains, we had some bridges wash out around Summers, the western part of the county. Through my conversations after coming into office, I learned that we've replaced one of those bridges and it's now open. Well, I think that's a wonderful way for us to celebrate something for Washington County. But that's just one example. As you can understand, I want the public to know what our road program is, where they're working, that kind of thing. That's another example of what this person could be doing. So if that's a good example for you.
Okay. I guess it's just the amount that worries me too. It seems like an awful lot of money, and I think our number one job is to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and that the people expect us to do that. We have a fiduciary duty to do that. So I will be voting no because of that.
JP Wilson.
Yes, I'll add to the discussion that I worked as a communications director and in public relations myself before, and depending upon who you hire, that man or that woman, if you get a conscientious person, they will look for things to do to improve the performance. That position can go in any number of directions. The judge himself can determine a lot of areas of focus, and I know he will, but the person in the position can also be suggesting ideas almost on a daily basis as to where we could improve in our communications efforts. So I think the person himself or herself could do a whole lot to improve what we're doing as a county.
Thank you, JP Wilson. Justice Rios Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking also as a communications professional for the last 20 years, used to work in television and won 2 Emmy Awards, but I would say that a county of this size should have a communications position. It is an important position. I think the salary is pretty comparable to what you would see in the private sector. I don't necessarily see a problem with that at all. And I think this is something that we have been lacking, especially during things like extreme weather events, during snow and ice storms, things like that. The Sheriff's Department has done a really great job, actually, during extreme weather of having deputies share things on their social media account and stuff like that. They've done a really stellar job, and it would be great to see the rest of the county, like the road department and things like that, have something sort of comparable as well to talk about, what roads are closed and current conditions and things like that. Because especially when there's bad weather, and you and I kind of talked about this, that's when a lot of people really tune in to what their government is doing. A lot of the times folks aren't really, clued into what's happening, but that's something where people from all walks of life, all kinds of different ways, the most basic thing is, how is this affecting me? How am I going to get around? Things like that. So during things like that, emergencies, stuff like that, I see this as being a really important position. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you, Justice Rios Stafford. Justice Lyons.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good position. Just, brought up the salary. Quick search, right? 3 sites out there are publishing salaries for this type of position upwards of over $175,000 with an average of about 85. So just an average of 85 on one site. Again, I think we're being physically responsible given the full-time salary that we're trying to hire somebody in at this rate. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, JP Lyons. Further discussion? Public comments?
Sorry, thank you, Your Honor. My name's Lou Reed Sharp, and I'm from Tawnytown, Arkansas. I think this is probably a great idea. One thing you might have considered is, in hindsight, if you're hiring a communications director to share your narrative out to the community, probably they should have had input on the symbolism of the 13 stars and the blue circles and the gold circles, because in fact, symbols do matter. And one of the first jobs a communications director may have to do is damage control when the press calls them and says, hey, you knew this symbol was, so why did you do that? Right? So I'm just saying this is a good example of why you need a communications director. And you have the free press here all the time. We have social media, but you need a communications director. But you need to lean on them and get guidance, because symbols matter, and we don't want to be known as a county that is affiliated with hate groups. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments? Seeing no more, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 17 by J.P. Dennis, a second by J.P. Pond. Ms. Myra, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lines. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
The motion's adopted. Item number 18. Counselor, will you please read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance enacting a code of ordinance for the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, revising, amending, restating, codifying, and compiling certain existing general ordinances of the political subdivision dealing with subjects embraced in such code of ordinances and declaring an emergency.
J.P. Dennis, would you like to introduce this ordinance? Cue your mic. Cue your mic.
Well, I've checked with the county clerk, and the codification has been filed for review, but not for the 30 days required by law. So I move that we amend the ordinance to remove the emergency clause and read for the first time tonight and let it move to a second reading next month.
Okay. I have a motion to amend the ordinance to remove the emergency clause by J.P. Dennis. I had a second by, was it J.P. Hires? J.P. Hires. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion is amended, and per request, we'll leave it on the first reading.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 19. Counselor, would you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance creating the position of 911 Deputy Director in the Emergency 911 budget for 2023.
J.P. Lemming?
Excuse me. This position is in John Luther's office, and he deals with the 911 addresses. And he had a gentleman that got a bachelor's degree back in June, and he moved on up into IT a little bit more, and this position's been vacant since last June. This position is, being that we got our new A-Win radio coming in with AT&T, all of the 911 addresses, so to say it this way, when our fire pagers go off and the lady comes on the mic and tells us all about where we're going, that's what this director's gonna do. He's gonna really make a pretty picture for us firefighters out here driving a fire truck. We know where we're going. And that's what this guy's gonna be doing, and this position is very, very, very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Lemming. Is that a motion to pass? Second. I have a motion to pass item number 19 by J.P. Lemming, a second by Justice Ecke. I will say too, when I went down to new judges training in the first week of December, I was pulled aside at that meeting and told how critical this was, and the state wants to make sure that we have this implemented so we have our 911 mapping up to date. So, any further discussion by the justices? Any public comments? Seeing none, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 19 by J.P. Lemming, second by Justice Ecke. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
David Wilson. Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
That motion carries. That concludes our business, and without objection, this meeting's adjourned.